So, Uday, can you introduce yourself?
Yeah, so I've been working with Talentica for over 4 years, and in this 4 years, I am uh, basically from QA, and I've been working in JS Techs for around 2.5 years.
So maybe Vilas, Yash, at least you can introduce yourself a bit. Yes.
Hello, guys. My name is Vilash. I carry more than 10 years of experience, and currently I'm working in NetCentric Cognizant as a front-end lead.
I think it's okay. We can start.
Yeah.
Vaibhav, shall we start?
I think yes, we should.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. Uh, so guys, since people are from both testing and background, so let's start with what testing is actually. So what do you think actually what's the testing is? And as a part of testing policies and practices, we will be covering first what is testing, what all challenges we have while doing testing, what all levels of testing we have, what are the testing best practices we should follow, and what is TDD, PDD, and what all approaches. And another part will be covering your JS, that is Mocha JS. So what do you guys think testing is? So most commonly people think is like we have requirement in place and we are just following those requirements we test, and the end result is the output. So I would say it's just in part of testing. So understanding business, understanding how it will be affecting the end users, uh, that all forms a part of testing. So basically, software testing is a process to evaluate the functionality of software application. So basically, I would say to see that whether the application we have designed is user friendly enough, is doesn't have any bugs. Maybe suppose consider an application you have designed an ATM application wherein a user needs to enter some or the other things which are hidden. So people won't prefer that website. So that may be a possible bug. Okay. So so there may be various parameters while testing. It may be user friendliness of a software application. It should be bug free. It should give you correct messages. It should be able to handle various performances, loads, put another. At the same time, it should be interactive enough to attract the user so that he goes with the application. So in India, if you see 50% of the market or the new apps are not in use because of the user interactiveness. So basically, what happens is people more often install apps, but generally it happens is like they don't find it user interactive. And in these cases, people do remove those things. Well, as a QA or a developer, while we test something, what all challenges we face? Now, Uday, can you move back? Yeah. Okay. So, and what's the software test life cycle currently is? So, I would say generally people do think is like testing should start once your development is completed. But I think in actual practice, it's not a feasible thing. Ideally, both should start hand in hand. So while development begins, here on the testing side, your testing strategies should be developed. At the same time, the test cases should be written as far as from the requirements. So both should go in parallel. Once test cases are written and your development part is done, your test execution goes hand in hand. Once the test execution is done, you find out bugs and everything. Once the bugs and everything is done, you may have a round of sanity checks, mock check, and final round of testing. Once that is done, you go for a delivery to your customers, maybe first round of alpha testing for a few customers, and then you go for a beta testing wherein the end user is going to use. But all this comes up with huge number of challenges. So what all challenges we face in testing or while testing a new application. Or the next slide, please. So first and foremost is inadequate product and business knowledge. So while testing, most of the developers or QAs, what they do is like this is set from the customer. This is something which customer needs, and we test it accordingly. But we need to think from other perspectives also. Finally, customer is also delivering to your end user, how friendly it is, how the business will impact, how what's the cost is, associated with it, what will the impact if it goes wrong. So that makes testing much more efficient rather than just going blindly on the requirements. Another is changing requirements. So we have several customers in the market. So every customer has or his or her set of requirements, or maybe say changes they require. So accumulating all these changes makes it quite difficult for a QA to test the application accordingly. So how we can cope up with this? So I would say rather than having it demoed at the end of the application when the whole application is designed, why can't we have it the smaller pieces when we have a simple single functionality ready? Let's have a demo. Let's get it gets all combined that what's the result and output they need it. So this will reduce your requirement changing at the end later stage, and these things can be done at the earlier stage. Moreover, we don't have documentations while we design. So this happens is like some or the other people move out of the project or something. We don't have documentation, or the end user don't have something to follow while following any application. So that is again the challenge with the software testing, regression cycles. So generally it's thing like we deploy products once your sprint is ready. So post every sprint. So as a QA or developer, if you are asked to do something which is very redundant or on a weekly or a bi-weekly basis, you feel bored. Okay. So there comes the challenges that how to keep people motivated there, and how to have our testing more effective there. So here we can have automation and performance automations in place. Communication. That's a major fault going on currently in the industry, I would say. People do say something, and on the other side, a person who don't have adequate business knowledge understands something else. So this gap should be minimized. No quality measurements. So moreover, we do test something, but do we have some quality measurements like how many test cases executed, how many bugs we should, high priority bugs we should leave, or how many test cases QA or a developers should cover, what should be the percentage testing coverage? We don't follow most of the times. So this will make a challenge, because if we don't have a coverage, we will never be able to know how much of the things will we have covering as a part of testing. Uh, Agile becomes waterfall. That's common problem. So as a part of Agile, we need to test our application more oftenly and more equally with the developers. But generally what we do, let developers develop, and then we will test the application. So this becomes a problem that at the end we get the results. So that increases your development efforts as well as testing efforts. And the tool selection. So we have variety of tool selection tools in the market. So analyzing and utilizing them effectively is much more interesting to make something very easy. While if you go for an incorrect tool, that may lead you to a cumbersome process on a later stage of the application. Okay. So what all testing levels we have currently, or what QA teams generally or developers follow. So we have an initial round of testing that is called as a unit testing. Then we go for component, then integrations, then system, acceptance, and alpha and beta testing. So let's walk through each of these and let's see what's the difference, because there is a very minor difference and people do generally combine both these testing types. Okay, so basically unit testing is something wherein we test very small component, very small part of application, like a UI page is developed. Okay, so just a single page is maybe a unit or a page, single page application. So that is unit testing. So individually testing each and every component part of application is unit testing. A bigger version of that comes as component testing, wherein you test a whole component. Now let's consider a unit ATM application. Okay, so wherein ATM screen may be a unit part, wherein you insert card and you pull out money from and you enter all details, maybe a component testing. Okay. Uh, the next stage is your integration testing, wherein you combine various components uh, of the application and you have an end-to-end testing of integration of various components. Like in a bank application, maybe consider a place you apply for a loan application. Your loan application goes to a banking system. So that's an integration wherein your loan application or your maybe account application flows from your maybe your desktop or maybe from bank's page to bank's internal systems. So that whole end-to-end combination goes into integration system. Now again comes the system testing. So system testing is testing the system entirely. Now how it's different from integrations testing. So generally what happens is you have end-to-end testing of maybe from filing a loan application to bank system. Now there may be n number of integrations or n number of checkpoints which are there in this flow. So your system testing will include all those checkpoints, all those integrations to be tested along with the integration of individual components. Okay. Now comes the acceptance testing. So once all this type of testing is done, you are well confident that your system is working. But there are like customers whose expectations may vary. There are customers who thinks this screen may be different or data is not incorrect or performance is incorrect. So that forms a part of acceptance testing, wherein basically we determine whether the software we have developed is adequate enough to meet the system specification. Like you might have seen recently, Flipkart went down on Big Billion Sales Day. So because the acceptance was like something this much of the amount of user will hit the application, but the count was more. So considering that fact that if we have analyzed that this much is the user base we have maybe, and this is what we can support of. So that forms a part of acceptance testing. Secondly, your data, maybe your whatever data is you are flowing, maybe data is floating correctly or not, whether your application is usable or not. Maybe like you have a buy now option on a Flipkart application. So if I go on view on particular item and then if I have a buy now, so user need to click twice. Whether if I get this buy now button on the front itself, maybe if I have a fixed set of things which I need to purchase, I will directly click buy now there. So that number of clicks also makes user, because if as a user I have to click twice to application, I feel why I go for this application if I get something on a one click. So that's something usability is very important. Another set is your performance, how much user supports we have, how much of the application. So as initially an application may have less number of users, but as soon as it grows, the user base increases, user confidence should be increases. So how scalable is your application? That's again an important factor of the acceptance testing. Okay. Go the next, please. Then we have alpha and beta round of testing. So generally you have seen when a Facebook or a Flipkart or something releases any product, so they decide that this is a user base, maybe 10 or 15 or odd users for which they deploy this application, and which end user basically tests and records like this is the problems we are facing. So before releasing it to the customer, so testing is carried out with a very number of very minimal users. That forms a alpha testing. And beta testing is like you give to end users and they test various. So basically these are your real customers or end users who test your application based on your designs, your inputs, your functionalities, and usability. So that forms your end testing, and then once everything is done, you deploy your product for testing for live users. Sorry. So generally, what are the best practices and policies which we follow while we follow all these testings? So we should analyze the risk. Like if you have an application which is related to your medicine or a bank, and if you are able to withdraw money without a correct password, so that's a big risk. Well, there may be some application wherein you are fetching records that are not much important. So in those cases, the risk is less. So higher the risk, the more efficient the testing is required. Never ever ignore a bug. Generally, when a developer or a QA test, what we do is we find across something bug and we see that this is not reproducible, and we just leave it aside. This may be because of some corner cases, or maybe something which is very minute, which we are not able to see while reproducing it. So in these cases, generally we ignore the bugs. So ideally we shouldn't do that, because there may be some end user who may face this bug, and this may reduce the confidence of that customer while using their application. Think from end user perspective. So generally what we do while testing, we see that customer has given this requirement. Yes, our application is following it, and we just go ahead for the application or the testing is done. No, ideally we should think how the end customer is using. There may be something which your product manager or your business analyst might have missed in those requirements. So you may be the right person to approach that this is something we need to have, or maybe this is something which can increase the user productivity or user prospectivity. So we need to analyze those and highlight those. We generally, what we do is like, so whenever we start automation, we don't analyze too. We just blindly, most of the people go with like Selenium or Cypress or maybe a number of tools. We just decide that yes, my colleague is using it, I just go with that tool. But we need to understand my application and your colleague's application may be different. They may have different set of requirements. They may have different set of application. They may have different set of languages. Okay, so we need to analyze various tools. We need to give sufficient time before starting automation that this is the tool what I need. This is the tool that will suit my requirements going forward. Because it may be possible that initially a tool supports your requirements, but at a later stage, it may not. So we need to analyze what is our testing requirements at a very earlier stage, and then we have to map the automation tool accordingly, and then we should start with that. Most of importantly, keep yourself updated with latest QA market trends. So every day new tool comes in the market. I know it's very quite difficult for anyone of us to remember all tools and technologies, but what people do is they keep on taking experiences and utilizing that experience, but at the same time there may be something new in the market that could boon or enhance something better than their experiences also. So we need to keep ourselves updated with market trends. Test early, test often. Yes, this is the key, right? So generally what people do is like once development is completed, we will test. We will not test entirely single application or a single component. But consider a situation wherein you have developed the whole set of application and now you are testing and you come across a bug. Your developer or a QA might not be effective enough to find where this bug is coming from. He need to analyze everything end to end. So that time gap, that analysis takes huge amount of time. And at the same time, there may be 10 things which he needs to change to fix that. But if we have analyzed that bug initially, there may be one thing which someone needs to change, and going forward, he may have followed those things. So how often we test, how early we test, how early we capture bugs, that makes our end timelines much more easy and much more faster than when we test at the later stage of the application. Generally, this is a practice wherein people do involve test coverages and code coverages. So it's one of the best practice to include all this, because while we test randomly, we don't know what actually we have covered or what it's not covered. So ideally, when we have a code coverage, like if I have coverage covered 70% of my code this time of testing, well, next time I need to ensure that it's more or at least the same number rather than having it going less. So this, what this will help is like at least I'm testing 75% of my application or the code which has been written. So this will help me more testing coverage. Okay. Don't rely on black box testing. Go for white box and gray box. So generally, when we come across a bug or something, we just raise it to someone that this is the bug and we need to fix. But there may be something which our dev person or a person who has written the code has written wrong. Maybe the function itself. In place of maybe a formula itself, he might have written wrong. So if we are good enough to analyze those things, we are good enough to read that code base. And if we are able to go for that type of testing, we will be able to say that this is boss, this is the code we have written wrong, and ideally we should fix this. So this way it helps a faster capture of bug and faster result output. Taking scalability and application performance into consideration while testing. So we need to think how many of the user base will be there, how much of the application or how much of the users our application can be at a particular instance of time. We need to take into consideration at that time that how the scalable my application is. So consider a situation wherein you consider that your application has started and it supports 100 users. Uh, you just have given a number that it will support 100 users, but actually it's not supporting since you haven't done your performance testing out there. And if it finds in a real time that the application is not supporting that 100 user, it will be quite difficult. But if we have done performance benchmarkings, if we have done performance testing upfront, that this is the number we are able to support. And in case if this, we have added the alarms that if this goes beyond this number, we should we should enhance our maybe limits or our server sizes for the application. So that makes a user more confident. At the same time, we also get an alarm that yes, this is, if we are expecting 100 users and hundreds are there, so we should increase our server sizes. So at least, or we need to make some changes to make our application more scalable or more robust. Automate as much as possible to avoid redundant work. So generally what happens if someone is given a task that he or she has to report on a daily basis, maybe on a weekly basis, so it's quite obvious we feel bored. It's human tendency that we will not be able to do same things again and again. So what's the approach there? So we should try to automate those steps more often, more effectively, so that we need not, at the same time it increases your productivity also. Okay. So common mistakes which we make as a QA, that is we don't take bigger pictures of business into accounts. uh, Obviously requirement gaps is one of the thing which we need to discuss with business or the product person at the initially, thinking from the end user perspective, starting automation without analyzing any tools. So that we have covered in last cycle also, that we should effectively analyze rather than looking at someone else that what he or she is using as a tool. We should analyze what our tool, our application will be suiting the most. So it's common thing criticizing developers. Yes, this developer hasn't write the code good enough. That's why we are getting bugs or something. No, so basically, dev and QA should go hand in hand, wherein maybe QAs, while writing devs, can help developers that this is the boss, this is the way, this is the test cases we should cover. So this way, if initially a developer gets an insight that these are the test cases which we should cover as a part of coding or while coding, so this will increase productivity of both QA as well as developer. rather than criticizing at the end, yes, this is something developers have missed and this is something breaking. Frequently changing the focus. When we work on multiple projects or multiple items, so we are not sure that what we are doing some of the times. Like we devote half of our time to one application, at the same time we devote half of time to other application, and we are not getting end to end what's the customer needs are, what's the what our application understanding is. So rather than increase changing the focus, give your time sufficient time to one thing, then move to other, so that this will help that you are confident enough that this is the thing I have tested, this is the thing which will work fine. Not asking developers help. So generally, QA and developers most of the time I've seen goes in isolation. So that should really not happen. You shouldn't be shy enough to sit with developers. You shouldn't be shy enough to say developers that let's both of us go with your code. Maybe if you don't have access or something, let's go through your functions, whatever you have written. So this will help a developer guys also, at the same time a QA guy also, that he understands your code well. He think whatever you have written, he should be able to analyze. Yeah, and if something is there which is breaking, those things are covered at the initial stage. Incorrectly evaluate the impact of a new functionality or a fix. So this happens most of the time when we fix something, this may break or some of the other things. So if both QA and developers are working parallelly with each other, this may reduce, because most of the time what happens is we fix something, we are not aware that this may break something else, and finally it happens is like this is fixed and that is break. So that condition shouldn't happen. So that can be avoided if whenever we are fixing something, we have definite suite of things that this may impact these all things, and we need to capture all these things while developing something or while making any code changes, as well as while testing something or while defining something for our test cases. Okay. So now there are two common approaches which generally people do follow while testing something. One is your TDD and another is your PDD. So let's go when and which approach is suited most. Ideally, when we should follow TDD, what's the process TDD is, what is BDD, and what's the process BDD follows. So TDD is basically test-driven development. So in this case, whenever as soon as your developer starts writing code, so at the same time your QAs start writing test cases. Okay. So TDD is a development technique. It's used for automation testing, as well as if your test cases are automated at the initial stage while development is writing code. So in this cases, the probability of getting your bug at the initial stages will be more, because at the initial stages, like whenever your development pushes the code, your automation test cases are run on that, and you will be able to capture those bugs then and there itself, rather than you are getting it at the end user. TDD obviously has a high test coverage, as well as the quality is code is more and it's flexible. Okay, but the most important thing for developer is like writing test cases before that code is developed. So that's something we need to ensure that QAs are writing and covering those things at upfront with the development. So what will basically cycles is? So basically, what basically a QA or developers and TDD approach added those test cases. Once your code is ready, run those test cases, see what all is failing. Fix, there may be fix on test cases side, there may be fix on dev side. So this may be or there may be fix on both sides. So fix all those, again run the test cases. So this cycle continues until everything, whether it's from testing or whether it's from development, both are fixed. And once that is in, your code is pushed or merged, and you get a final product which is ready. Okay. So what all steps TDD basically follow? So basically write your test cases, run all the test cases on the code developed, Once your code is developed, develop the code for that test case in case some test case is failing for which code is not written. So develop test cases, develop write code. So developers may write code parallelly that this is the test case which is failing because the code or that functionality is not covered. So maybe the code is developed. Again, your test cases are run. In case your test cases are failing, now you have to refactor your code, whether it's your testing code or it's your development code. And once the above steps are repeated unless you get your final results. Next to that. Now goes to BDD. So BDD is your behavioral driven. There is a BDD is just an extension of TDD. So wherein you start writing the test cases, considering the behavior in fact rather than the test cases in behavior. So once behaviors are written, so based on we develop the, so basically what happens is like you have all the scenarios or behaviors written here, and then the development of code happens, and post development, so basically these scenarios are run on those code. But why BDD is suitable on testing front is like the BDD approach is you can everyone can see the scenarios, whether it's developer or a tester or a business person who doesn't knows how to write the code. Okay, when BDD is considered as a best practice when it comes to automation testing, and most of the times it's like if customer also wants to do what all test cases you have covered, they can go through your BDD test cases. And both in BDD, both customers and basically testers work hand in hand. So basically what all steps, it's like writing the behavior of your application. Once your behaviors is written, maybe your product person, your business analyst, or maybe your QA person, who may be the right person to think from the end user perspective, can get an understanding whether all things are covered. Then writing those in automation scripts, implement your functional code, and if your behaviors are fine enough, run on your dev codes, refactor or organize them, and once it's done, repeat all the steps until everything is fixed, and once everything is done, it's merged. Okay, so what's the difference between two, TDD and BDD? So the basic in TDD we start with writing your test cases, while in BDD we start writing behavior. Rather than testing, we write scenarios. So TDD is more on what the requirement is, what basically is the requirement which is coming from your product person, maybe. While BDD is from a end user, how end user will be using your application. TDD may be the languages is our programming languages, while in BDD it's written in simple English language. So where to go for TDD and where to go for BDD? If you are having an API testing or a third-party tool wherein you are more of a API dependent, you should go for TDD. While when there are user interaction, maybe like your e-commerce application, your website, I would say BDD is much more preferred. Again, going from the tools which BDD and TDD supports, so these are quite different. Like you have TestNG, JUnit, NUnit, which are supported in case of TDD. While in case of BDD, there are spec flows, Cucumber, and MSpecs. So this is the difference between TDD and BDD. So I will ask now there to take you through JS scripts, and
Sure.
let's see how these TDD and BDD and everything can be implemented.
Yeah. So today first I'll be covering what are the different type of testing frameworks, but mostly we will be covering steps through Mocha, because there are multiple testing frameworks which are available in JS language. So basically a testing framework is something which provides you a set of functions or a set of guidelines or rules in order to design your test cases. Now these guidelines may or may not include few of the handler methods or which will help you in building structures of your test cases. For example, there are hooks, uh, and then there are a lot of post test analysis which has been done on onto your application. For example, once your test cases are executed, what you need is a report. So reporting is usually handled by your testing framework, and then as I mentioned earlier, hooks. So later in the next slides, we'll also get to know what are the different handlers that are usually a testing framework provides. So some of the most famous testing frameworks for JS are Mocha, Jasmine, and Jest. So out of these three, Mocha is the most famous JS framework which is available and most widely used testing framework. The community is very rich, so usually if you have any of the doubt, if you post it onto the community, you'll get a better response rather than for Jasmine and Jest. Most probably, Jasmine and Mocha works in a very similar way. The only difference between Mocha and Jasmine is Jasmine provides you it has its own assertion library, whereas Mocha does not have a assertion library. It's just a testing framework. In order to use Mocha, you have to use a separate assertion library. And now there is Jest. So Jest has a testing frame. It's a separate testing framework which was developed by Facebook, and it is best suited if you are using React. Because it does provide you a testing framework which is very similar to Mocha. It provides you its own assertion library. It also provides you sign-on, and you can also use different other sets of tools with Jest. So all three of them are good, but it depends what kind of application that you're currently developing and what tech you are currently working with. Long story short, if you're not really sure what to use, you should definitely try out Mocha because the community is very rich. So if you have a hurdle anywhere, it will be easier to debug. Now, as I mentioned earlier, that Mocha is a very feature-rich JavaScript test framework, which basically runs on Node.js. So in this topic, we'll be covering a few of the things that I've highlighted here, which are basically context described functions. So then there is hook, what is done callback, and how to test async code. Then how to provide timeouts. So beforehand, I will tell you that there is a set timeout for each and every test case. Since Mocha is used for unit testing, and unit testing tends to be very fast as compared to UI testing. So any of the UI operation you will do will have a longer test duration. But in unit testing, you are testing very minute or very minuscule things. For example, you are just verifying whether your function, if there is a function for sum, where you provide let's say different n numbers of integer, and you just wanted to verify whether the sum function is working or not. So this sum function could be a part of a calculator feature, but you only wanted to verify the sum function. So you have to write a unit test case. But if you find that your test case may incorporate few of the steps which may require a longer little time, you can override the default timeout. Then we'll discuss only and skip functions. These are very helpful if you wanted to debug your test cases. Then there are Mocha ops and reporters. So what I do is I'll quickly just share my screen. I hope. Yeah. So I think this is very what do you call it? It's very rudimentary to QAs, that they already know what a test suite or a test group is. So in a similar fashion, we have in testing frameworks, we have context and describe. So basically, context and describe are the alias of the same function. Context and describe can be used for test suite. So in testing terminology, test suite is actually a group of tests, and you combine a similar set of test cases into a test group. For example, if you wanted to test a particular feature, as I mentioned that if you wanted to test, let's say, a calculator feature of an application, so you should write all of the test cases bundled into a test group or test suite. So here, describe and context are known as those functions. These are basically alias for test suite, and you can use any such things as you want. So if you have any of the question, just write them down in the chat, and I'll add I'll address them at the end. But in order to answer your question, no, describe does mean test suite. So does context. So there are different styles of writing a unit test case. For example, what I'll do is I'll quickly just show you. Yeah. So there are two different famous styles of writing a test case, which is describe and it. So here, describe is your test suite, and it is the actual thing which is going to be tested. Then there is another style of writing your test cases, which is context and specify. So specify is again an alias of your test case. These are basically a different style of writing test case. It's totally up to your adoption which you wanted to write. Another thing which our testing framework provides is you can write a describe function under a describe function. For example, if you wanted to form a test case where you only wanted to maintain one test file, one JS file. So what you can do is you can write, what you can do is you can separate your features into different describes, and under these describes, you can write another describe, which is basically what do you call it, a particular scenario of that particular feature. So you can write a describe under a describe in order to encapsulate it. But your describe should have at least one it in order to test it. Otherwise, there is no point in writing a describe function. Then what else? Yeah. Then we'll just quickly go on hooks. So there are different kind of hooks. There is before, after, before each, and after each. So these are very self-explanatory hooks. So before runs each and every time. Only once under a particular block. So you can write a before function inside a describe or outside a describe. It totally depends how do you want it to execute it, but it is a block scoped. Then there is after function, which runs only once all of your test cases are done within that block. Then comes your before each and after each. So after each runs before each runs before each and every test presented in that block, and after each runs after each and every test in a block. So those who are QA might not be knowing what is a block. So anything which comes under a parenthesis bracket is a block. So everything inside a block. So all of your hooks will be scoped to a block because these are block level functions. Let's just quickly go through the rest of the things that I mentioned. For example, done callback. Okay. Before I move to few of the things. For example, what is done and everything else. So there are we have to write async code, and if you wanted to test your async code, you have to use done, because otherwise your test case will never understand that your test is complete and it has to move to your next test. So what we usually do is, as you can see, that we provide a callback function called done to our test cases, and then we call this done function in our test cases in order to let this test case know that its task has been done and you have to move to the next test case. So another few of the thumb rules that you have to remember is that you should only call done once in your test case. What will happen if you are using multiple dones in your test cases? Your test case will fail because it throws an error to the Mocha. Another thing is that done is a callback. Done callback is a node style callback. So you can always provide your error function to your done function. And what else? Yeah. So let's just quickly jump into few of the examples how done works. So this is a very basic async test where we are just trying to assert a particular API which should return a 200. So what I'll do is I'll also show you how only and skip work. So if I wanted to test this class, I already have written a script called test mocha, which only calls all of your test cases which are present in your test folder. So what we will do is we will share this repository with all of you so that you can see all of the test cases which are present here and you can play around with them. So as you can see that first test is passed and the second test is failed. Now if you wanted to debug, okay, or you wanted to run only one of the test cases, what you can do is you can add this only function, and this only will execute to your first test case. So now if I run my test case, this only runs in for your first of the test case. Okay, this is still failing. Is expected one. Okay, I did not save it. Sorry. Let's save it. Yeah, as you can see, only one of the test cases is currently running, and the second test case it got skipped. So if you provide only what your Mocha does, it checks all of the test cases which has only added to it. Then there is skip. What you can do is if you have multiple, let's say multiple number of test cases, but you know that there are few of the test cases which are failing because either the functionality is not yet done or the test case is incomplete. So what you can do is you can add skip into it, and let's do a save. Let's run it. So again, only your first test is run, and you can see that one of the test case is pending and your test execution has skipped it. Now looking at your test case, so it is a very simple test case as it is calling an API, and we already know that if your test case is making a call to an API, we have to wait for it in order to get the response back to the system. So this is why we have added done that first wait for a response, and once a response is added to us, we have to assert that it has 200 response, and then once all of your assertions are done, we provide a done function that now this test case is complete and the execution can move to next step. So this is an example of a callback function, but there we can also write the same test case in a promise chain method. So if we wanted to write it in the similar fashion, let's see what happens. What I'll quickly do is I'll skip this test case, and now we'll only run this test case. So what here I've done is I've written a simple HTTP request which resolves a promise for a URL which has been hit. Now here you can see that what I've done is I've added an assertion which is an incorrect assertion. So we already know that this test case is going to fail because this call will return us a 200 response, but we are trying to assert it in 201. So if we are trying to do it and if we are trying to verify this, now let's see what happens. As you can see, the test case did fail, but if you are looking at the exception, this is failing because of the timeout, not because the assertion failed. So this kind of this error message does not help anyone. We wanted to know why it is failing. It is currently failing because according to Mocha, what Mocha found out was it has passed your default timeout, which is 200 millisecond. So we already know that even in 200 millisecond, the response could have been gotten back to the application. So what went wrong? So usually if you're writing your test cases for promises, what we have to do differently here is now we know that this done should not be a part of this then function. So what can we do? Let's do one thing. Let's do another then, and in this then we will add a function. Okay, now what we are currently doing is we added a next first what we are doing is we are asserting, and then we are returning the then function, sorry, done function to our Mocha. Now if we're trying to run this particular test case, now you can see that this test case is failing, but at least we are getting a proper response that this is failing because of the mismatch in assertion. One of the demerits of writing this is because that we have to write an additional then onto our test case, which when you're writing your test case in a promise should never happen, because this then looks like an additional step. So if you're writing your test case in promise, what you can directly do is you can remove this done, and now what will happen is this assert will fail. This assert will fail, but your test case will pass, because now this assert result will directly be handled by Mocha rather than waiting for your done. So what we are currently doing is we are returning the assert error directly to Mocha when we are handling promise. Wait a sec. Okay. Yeah. Now you can see what I did was I returned the promise itself to Mocha, and Mocha was able to identify that this is failing because the assert is incorrect. Now, as I mentioned earlier, that you should not uh, you should not have multiple what do you call it done. So I'll quickly just show you one of the example what happens if we are adding multiple dones. for example, let's say there are few of the test cases, few of the assertions that we wanted to do in this particular test case. And what we decided was, instead of adding it into the function, if we add it here, what will happen is now the test case will again fail because it is trying to skip this particular step, and the order of execution for done is that the Mocha recognizes done before the actual await of this particular API. So if we are trying to run this particular test case, the test case will again fail, or okay, this got skipped. Great. And if we have a done here, then your test case will fail at of the timeout. Failed again. Okay, it skipped again. Great. Did I add anything else? No, I did not. Okay. So that was one of the things. One more thing is according to if you look at what we call the Mocha documentation, you'll find that what Mocha recommends is not to use arrow functions into your test cases. And the reason being is that what do you call it? Mocha do provides you a native lexical this, so which helps you in maintaining a test case. For example, there are different variables which Mocha handles. One of the prime example is timeout. For example, if I let's say add another test case, let's do timeout. Okay. What I will do is I'll add a this dot timeout for 3000 and add an assert dot let's add a false.
Yeah, I guess there is a query regarding the test cases we have written.
Okay. The current test case, you're directly calling the API and a certain response, but can you let us know how to mock an API call? Yeah. What do you call it? We will also show you different types of mocking techniques. For example, stubs, spies, and fake. We will show you. Those are part of sign-on, which we will be covering in the later part of our test cases. Okay, where was I? Okay, I was going through this timeout test case. Okay, let's add an only here. This is a timeout. So now what will happen is if it was a regular test case, this test case will try to execute each and everything within a 2 seconds. So after 2 seconds, this is a default timeout for Mocha. If there are few of the test cases which you think is going to take a little longer time, for example, let's say if you have a before function for your test case where you are making an API call and you are doing some kind of operation into your application for your test cases. For example, let's say you are setting up a data system before you are actually testing your feature. So you know that there are various IO operations which are going to take a longer time. So what you can do is you can add this timeout, and this will automatically increase your default. This will override your default timeout. So let's say what we will do is we will add a set timeout and we will pass the done function, and let's pass it 4000. Let's pass a done function here. Okay, now okay, if we are already adding set timeout, we don't need this. Okay. Now what set timeout will do is it will call the done function after 4 seconds. But since the timeout is 3 seconds, the test case will fail because it is taking a longer time of 300 milliseconds and overriding your default timeout by 200 milliseconds. So if I'm right, this test case should fail because of the aforementioned thing that I mentioned, that your test case took a longer time. The expected is 3000, but that your test case took 4. Yeah, so the timeout exceeds your 300 millisecond because we have added a set timeout. And if you remember the previous test case where I was showing you if when we added done in this function, the default, it follows the default timeout, which was 200 milliseconds. So this is a timeout is a very nifty feature by Mocha, with which you can play around, and you can customly add timeouts to a specific set of your test cases. Now, what happens is if this function was an arrow function, let's turn it into an arrow function. Okay. Now, if we are trying to run this particular test, as you can see, now here, see, I tried to overwrite this timeout by 300, but what is currently happening is if you are trying to run it into an arrow function, my Mocha will not be able to access its lexical this object. So this is why what Mocha usually suggests, that you should not use arrow functions unless and until it is very unless and until it's kind of something where you don't have any other option. But I don't think it's very important. So if you should usually try to avoid either writing your test cases without done. For example, in this where the promise example that I showed you earlier. So this is one way of doing things. Another thing that I quickly would like to show you. Let's see what else was pending. I think I already mentioned the rest of the things. For example, the done, the sync. Where was it? Okay. Now let's quickly move to assertions. So as I mentioned earlier that there are different kind of assertions, assertion library. So assertion is basically where you would try to verify your end result with your expected result. So any of your test cases will have these set of things. For example, what your test case is, the steps, and you have a verification step. So verification step always come at the end of it. And for this, we need assertion library. So assertion libraries are a tool which provides you a way to verify your expected and current output. Without your assertion, your test is basically nothing but a bunch of your test cases, a bunch of your steps where you are performing different operations, but you are not actually verifying your end result. So these are few of your famous testing library which are out there, and of this lot, most of the people prefer Chai assertion library because it provide you a rich assertion based on your testing styles. For example, we devs do call it BDD and TDD writing of assertion, but it's again a matter of preference. How do you want it to form your assertion? It's the same way which goes with the context and should and describe and it, whichever you prefer. It has nothing to do with your coding skills because basically it is doing the same thing. So Chai does do provide you both the TD and BDTSI style of expects and should. So it has so expect is basically considered as a BDD style and should is considered as a TDD style. It's just the lingo how these two library works. So what I don't think so. It's pretty simple. So instead of assert, I can add an expect, and it will work the same way. That expect res was it res response dot status code dot to be equal 201, and this will work the same way as assert. So this is a matter of preference, which you would prefer, and it has nothing to do with it. Both works the same way. Now let's move to mocks and testables. So mocking and testables are a way in which we can make our testing more efficient, because and if I have to tell in terms of depths, for example, if I wanted to test in React, if I wanted to test a particular let's say rudiment, very basic component, like I wanted to verify whether a button which is being used in my component, uh, in let's say a page component, if I wanted to test whether the button is correct, I do not have to render all of my page in order to test my button. So what I can do is now my button will have a lot of property. For example, the onClick function. What will happen when I click on it? So and it might have a few props. For example, what is the name, a name for it? So those sort of things. So now if I wanted to test my page by UI testing, I what instead of actually rendering the button with the actual props, what I can do is I can provide it a fake prop. So this is a way to test your page with the only intention of testing an isolated feature or a isolated scenario. So there we can use these definitions, for example, mocks and tests. So these are called testables. Testables, they are the pretend object which we use in order to test your actual object. It is used so that we can test a particular function, a component, or object in isolation, as I mentioned you in the previous example. Now there are different types of testables. So either you call it a testable or a mock. These are the same thing. There are different types of mocks or testables, like dummies, stubs, and spies. Now, dummy is an object which is passed, but you actually don't use it. This is only in order to file your parameter list. So as I mentioned earlier, for example, if you have, let's say, a component where you have multiple props, let's say you have 10 props, but you don't actually want to provide the props, you just wanted that component to be rendered. So what you can do is you can provide them fake or dummies. So in order to render the component, so what I'll do is I'll quickly show you one of the example. Where was it? Okay. Okay, so here you can see that this is a task manager function, which has a task list and two of the functions which are called add task and count task. These are pretty simple. So count task will return you the length of task list, and add task will push any of the tasks. So if I wanted to test whether my add task function is working, I don't actually have to provide any object to my task list, any actual object to my task list. So instead of providing it a real object, real task, what I'm currently doing is I created a dummy task which has an empty, it's an empty object. So I'm providing this dummy task to my tasks, to my task manager object, and then I can verify whether my task count is correct or not. So this is one way of using your dummies, because this only serves a purpose in order to fill my task list, but I'm not actually, I don't care what it has. I don't want an actual object in order to test my add task function or in order to test my task count function. So this is how we usually add dummies. So now, yeah, this is a pretty straightforward that I'm adding this dummy to my add task to the task list, and then I'm verifying whether the result is correct or not. Next comes Spy. So Spy is amongst my favorite stuffs, amongst my favorite mocking techniques, because it gives you a very rich base in order to verify your functions. So what is Spy? A spy is an object that records each and every interaction of your object or your function. For example, um, where was it? Let's quickly do here. Okay. Yeah. So let's look at the same example, but with spice. So what we are currently doing is it's the same dummy function, the same task manager now, but instead of adding it, what additionally what we did is we added a spy. Now this spy is add task spy, and we are adding this spy to the task manager object, and we are trying to spy on add task function. So what it does is any of your interaction with your add task function, this is going to capture it. Your add task file is going to capture it. So here you can see that I added the same step, which is I'm adding two of the dummy tasks, and let's yeah. Now instead of what do you call it? Instead of using task manager dot task count, what I can do is I can use this spy, and in order to verify whether the task manager, uh, what is the call count, so I can use it by my spy. It also provides you sign on, specifically sign on provides you a different sort of assertions as well. For example, if you wanted to know how many times how many times this spy has been called. So this is the spy call count. So as you can see that this has been called twice, and here I am providing an assertion of 3. This will obviously be failing. So what I'll quickly do is I'll show you the result. I should have skipped it in the first one. So as you can see that it is expecting 2, but it found it that we are providing it expected result as 3. I should skip it. Let's skip it. Called once, called twice. Called twice with, let's pick it for later example. Yeah. So now we are trying to verify if my spy has been called only once. But as you can see that in this step, I have been calling it twice. So if you look at the error, this is going to say that expected add task to be called once, but in actual it has been called twice. Now here you can see that it has been called twice with this object. Now this this moves us with the next my favorite assertion, which is called with. Now here I can provide my spy and my argument list provided to my spy. As you can see in my previous example, I provided it an empty object, and if I'm trying to provide it verify, let's say name some task. If I'm trying to do it like this way, this test is again going to fail that we are expecting our add spy to be called with an object where there is a key called name and value called task. But we actually provided it with some other dummy value, which was an empty object. Here you can see that it was expecting our what do you call it, the argument list to be an object with a key called name and value called task, but it found it to be an empty object. So you can use these strategies in order to what do you call it, fill in with your test cases, fill in with your test cases. Now the last test double or mocking parameter, which is called stubs. Now stubs are fake objects which has a fixed values. For example, if I wanted to, let's say, test, if I have to give an example of, let's say, if you wanted to test your front end code, but your backend is not yet developed. So what you can do is instead of making an API call, to the real API, what you can do is you can add it into your reducer that it will either return you a particular fixed response, but that is again modifying the way your code is working. Instead, what you can do is you can add a stub into your test case, and you can write a similar code. Where was it? Instead of making an API call, what you can do is instead of actually hitting an API, what you can do is you can return directly a 200 response here. So this is one way of doing it, where you are trying to verify whether your app is currently working or not. But again, stubs are not very reliable. You have to be really, what do you call it? You have to be very careful when you're using stubs, because it is always going to give you one kind of result. So you have to be very creative with your test cases in order to use stub. Wait, what is this? Yeah. So those are different kind of mocking values that we have. Now, a few of the best practices out of this session that I wanted to summarize is we should not use arrow function because it binds this of Mocha, and if you are using an arrow function, Mocha will not be able to recognize its context. For example, as I shown you in the time mode, you can use timeouts when you need setup or when you have a test execution step, which is a very lengthy step. Yeah, a few of the takeaways you can see is should not create your multiple tests in order to test a single what do you call it, a scenario. You can use only and skip, and you can add a message to assertion. This will help you keep track of it. One of the additional thing that I would like to tell you is, as mentioned previously, in the session that there are different styles, for example, TDD and BDD. So, but when you are trying to incorporate it into your testing project, what you can do is if you wanted to adopt a TDD style specifically for TDD. So what TDD says classically is that if your test case is failing, you should not use the developer should not be able to commit your code, or any of the untestable code should not be pushed. So there are many of the node packages which you can use. One such package is Husky. So if I can quickly show you, I'm currently using Husky, and I added a Husky hook, which is a pre-committer. So before I'm trying to commit anything, what it will do is it will run all of the test cases in the test folder, and it will check if the test cases are passing. Only then I'll be able to commit. And if my test cases are failing, Husky will not let me commit my code. So this is one way of doing your what do you call it, TDD style development. And there are many rules that you can add to Husky. For example, if you wanted to add a pre-push, or you wanted to make sure that if there are few of the features, for example, each and every feature that you're currently developing must have a test folder, so you can add it there. So if I have to show you this, let's see what are the changes in this code right now. There are a few of the changes. Let's git add dot. Okay, all of the things are added. Now let's try to commit it. Since we already know that there is at least one test case which is currently failing, git commit. This should ideally trigger our Husky pre-commit before actually making a commit. Yes, it totally depends upon what you want. It's totally fine whether you wanted to do a pre-push or a pre-commit. It's again a preference of your coding parameters. For example, you can add a pre-commit hook for where you can define a rule that if there are new files or new feature to be checked in, it must have a test folder. So in this way, you are making sure that your devs are writing unit test cases for the feature. So and yeah, you can have a pre-push in order to run all of the test cases. But if you are using Husky, you have to ensure that these are unit test cases, because unit test cases are way faster as compared to your UI test cases. Just to let you guys know that we are recording this session. So if you have missed anything, or if you think if you have missed any of the part, we will be posting all of these videos into the meetup, into our meetup page, so you can check it out later. And yep, that was most of it. If you have any other doubts, okay, what I'll do is I'll quickly just check through chats if you guys had any other question. Describe means test suite and context means test cases. Yes, but no, context and describe are the alias of the same thing. They are function which works in a similar fashion. This is a BDD approach of testing. So again, if you wanted to, what do you call it? If you wanted to adopt a BDD style in development, then you have to adopt different certain tools. For example, you have to adopt one of the famous is Gherkin. So, or sorry, not Gherkin, Cucumber. So Cucumber is a tool which is available almost in every language, be it Java, be it JS, be it Python. Where you develop a feature file, and in feature file you will write your feature, which is written in Gherkin language. Apparently it is called Gherkin, where you have a scenario, your examples, and then you will write your code, your test code based on your feature file. You will expose your methods, which is kind of be run by your Cucumber runner. Also, if you guys want any of the testing specific JS tools to be covered, do let us know in our on our meetup page.
Uday,
Yeah.
Uday, yeah, can you highlight your chat window so that everyone can see what are the queries you are handling?
Okay. Yeah. BDD approach, I think I've already covered it.
It's again a code. It's your editor highlighted as of now.
Actually, I think it's one of the Zoom feature where you will not be able, because I'm sharing all my screen.
Okay. No
Yeah.
issue. I request everyone to refer the chat window so that
Yeah.
we are on the same page.
Yeah. Also for Vishal, you were referring that can we use Mocha for UI component? Yes, we can use Mocha for UI component, but this is an additional effort if you wanted to use it for a specific testing tech, for example, Angular, React, or Vue. For React, I would suggest going with Jest because it has a better synergy. And if you wanted to still use Mocha with yes, you have to use Enzyme. So again, I'm seeing a lot of questions which are very specific to a few testing policies or testing technologies. Development technologies like React and Vue. So if you want us to cover a particular specific thing, we will be covering it in our next session. If you wanted it to be specific to UI testing, if we have enough votes, we will cover it. Yes, it is. Vaibhav, are you there, or OP?
Yes, I'm there.
Yes, I am here.
Yeah. So if you wanted to add anything into it.
So yes, from my side, I would definitely like you guys to share your feedback on meetup page this time. And other than that, I would also like to know that, as Uday also mentioned, like if you are interested in some particular topic or technologies which is regarding to JavaScript, we will be covering in upcoming session. And in case if you are not able to ask your queries now, you are free, or you can post it on meetup page. We will be handling there itself, there as well. So that's all from my side, and done. Well, Baba, if you want to join anything, say anything.
Yes, I think yes, we on any further things we can cover in case anyone is interested to cover any UI specific or AI specific, API specific, JS testing frameworks or anything. So
Yep.
we can go for. So your suggestions and feedbacks are more than welcome.